There is a secret that most pro athletes, elite CEOs, and high performers all know. They all have a group of world-class coaches working for them to help them optimize their potential. At SuperAthleteRadio, our goal is to provide you with the caliber of world-class coaches and guests to help you unlock your potential, dominate your industry, and dominate your life. Let's get better today. Welcome to Super Athlete Radio. Ms. Nikki Ann, how are you today?
I'm doing well.
Very excited to talk a little bit about a post game with about Ashley Merryman.
Yeah.
It's best-selling author of the book Top Dog, New York Times best-selling author of the book Top Dog, all about competition. How do you view competition?
It's a great question. I think it's needed. I think that's what makes the world go round. That's why we've been able to do so many great things as humans. It's because of the need for competition.
Yeah, and one of the big takeaways that she talked about was how competition is all about improvement. And she has a ton of high-profile clients right now in professional sports where she communicates that, and then it's a hard time. People have a hard time receiving that because it's so wired in us to look at competition in terms of winning or losing.
And what are her clients? What does she do for her clients?
I think overall it's kind of like a leadership consulting thing.
Okay.
She does a variety of different stuff.
Gotcha.
But she was talking about it in reference of they would be all upset if they lost. And her take was the better framing of it is, did you improve?
Gotcha. That's one thing I actually took away from her is losing is like guaranteed, right? So it's learning to become kind of like a better winner and a better loser. So I thought your talk with her was really interesting. What were some of your key takeaways from that?
A couple key takeaways were, one, I think overall, most of us would benefit from having more competition in our life.
Okay. Why?
Going back to what her take was, that it creates improvement.
Okay.
So it accelerates improvement.
Yeah. Okay. So it kind of goes into what she was talking about with, it's not about competing with other people. It's more so like improving within like yourself. Or is it about competing with other people and improving yourself?
That's a good question. Because I never really empathized with the take of you're only competing with yourself. Would you agree with that? Do you agree with that? You sound like you, if I remember the last episode we talked about, you said that was your kind of focus. I'm not competing with myself.
Yeah. Because I think especially for like a woman, you're conditioned from like the time you're like a child, which is one thing that she talks about, to not be competitive. And then coming from my background in, wrestling and sports and stuff like that, I had to switch like my mind to it's not about them, because I would feel bad sometimes like when I beat other people. So it just wasn't in my heart. So it's like, what if you just beat you? What if you beat you, the version of you yesterday? And that kind of helped me feel comfortable with winning. So yeah.
And then how do you know what the version of you yesterday looks like? I guess that would be the metric on that, is to have some kind of measure.
You got to have a metric. You got to have like tapes. You got to have you got to have a feel for like, where did I miss up on the last match or the last game? And then do better on that thing you didn't do so well on.
Yeah, what does your best look like?
I don't know. Best is yet to come.
And I think that's one of the things that we have with clients as Super Athlete, is to help them figure out what they do when they're performing really well.
Yeah.
Like the small rituals and routines and protocols, because you can stack those up, and then it sets you up to be at your best.
Yeah.
Regardless of kind of external environment.
Yeah. But taking it back to what you said, because I feel like you're on the other end of that, where you're good with competing against other people, I wouldn't say it's a good or bad thing, but like you feel like it's a necessity to like not just compete against yourself, but to compete against other people.
I always empathize more with the concept of you're competing against someone else.
Why?
Are you really competing with yourself from yesterday? Like, that sounds good, but I have a hard time putting my brain around it.
Okay. Why?
Well,
I sound like one of those little kids, but why? Sorry, go ahead.
We talked about Darwinianism a lot, like only the strong survive. And that's like a competition thing, right? And that doesn't really have to do with like being better than yourself than you were yesterday. It's competing against other animals.
Yes. Yeah.
There's that documentary on chimps. What's that called? Chimp Nation or something? They share 99% of our DNA. I don't think they're competing with
themselves yesterday.
Yeah.
Taking them back. Okay.
But they are relentless about competing. Like that's what they do all day, every day.
Yeah. I think it's good to have an objective. I think that's where your mind probably is.
Yeah.
That person is an objective. So my objective is to beat them or kill them or whatever it is that chimps do.
Yeah. So that's where I go with that. And then also there's a great teacher of history named Will Durant who's considered like the greatest historian of all time. And when he looked at throughout human history, he said that his like number one principle is that all life was competition. So when someone who's very knowledgeable says something like that, I listen to it, and then I don't think he's talking about you're competing with yourself.
Interesting.
So there's like two other big takeaways I had from Ashley. The other one was, or the second one was this idea of a challenge threat response. And when we do a challenge response, whether that's in competition or some shit in life that happens in life where we got to kind of step up and take control of the situation and do something, then we perform better. And then a threat response is we go into like fight or flight. So an example of this would be, she gave the example of like a football team being down like 40-0 in the first half. And then if the coach was saying, hey, we can come back and win this, then that would be, that wouldn't challenge them because they know in their minds that they don't have a chance to win. So what the reason I say that and the takeaway from that is that in our mind, what Ashley was saying is that we always want to reframe things in a way where we can win.
I love that.
Yeah.
But how much of your mind is like, I know mentally preparing like yourself for the thing or the challenge is great, but I feel like it only gets you so far. Do you think like you have to wire yourself mentally for that before even performing?
I think it plays a part. I agree with what you're saying though too. Can you tell a little bit more?
Well, I think there's a quote, I'm probably misquoting it, but like the body is tired, but like the soul is willing.
Okay.
So you can be willing and set yourself up and do all the like mental stuff. But if your body isn't like trained or automated to like win by any means, like I think your body's gonna take over. Your mind can only do so much.
Yeah. I agree 100%.
But who knows?
No, I agree 100%. Because you got to have the skill piece. And then this is something we talked about with on the podcast as well with Judd a couple weeks ago, who's a former Army Ranger, which has like, they have like very physically challenging training. And you can be mentally tough going into that training, but at some point, if you have not prepared your body, the body's just going to shut down.
Yeah, because I feel like mentally you're there, but when it's time for you to hit that reserve, when your tank is about to be on E, it gets really challenging, and your mind starts to like fuck with you a bit. But I think that's, or your mind could still be in that place of like mental toughness.
Yeah.
And your body doesn't have it.
Yeah. So you can improve your conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
You could do more training when you're already tired in terms of like skill stuff.
Okay.
And then also you can do workouts where you don't really know when there's an end, which creates kind of a level of uncertainty in the mind, which creates a certain energy.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. So those are some things that can maybe help you counter that.
I'm going to try that.
Yeah. So that was a big thing I took away from her. And then also the other big one is, which we've talked about like every day since, but like how powerful the mind is and how dumb the mind is. And what I mean by that, she gave the example of like, they did a study on people and they gave them a Jell-O cube. And they said to half the group, this cube is going to reform in your stomach after you chew it and digest it.
Okay.
And those people ate much less than the people who never got said that because their stomach was full with this Jell-O cube. So that's like an example of reframing things.
I like that.
Yeah? How can you apply that to your life?
How can I apply that to my life?
Huh? Well, you could have used the Jell-O cube strategy.
Yeah. Where's my Jell-O cube? Okay. Well.
Yeah. So I think, again, the frame goes how we can find ways to win no matter the situation. So when she was talking about the team that was down by 40 points, the football team, to not make the challenge of, all right, win the game. The challenge would be, all right, let's get a score. Let's stop them one time.
Okay.
As an example of a reframe that changes from a threat response to a challenge response. When we're in a challenge response, the body performs better, the brain thinks clearer, and we're more in control of our body. When we're in a threat response, then all of that's not as good.
We're more in control of our body when there's a challenge response or a threat response?
Challenge response.
Okay, gotcha.
So like the big frame and the big takeaway, like how this all kind of comes together, because so much of that is in competition, right? At Goat Shed a couple weeks ago, we had this striking coach come in who he was a striking coach for Sean Strickland. The guy who's like really, he had like a huge win in MMA, UFC a couple weeks ago. And this guy was talking about how much energy it is like to think about doing combinations while you're fighting. They'll talk about like someone will have the best conditioning on runs, someone will have the best conditioning on a bike, and then they'll start fighting and they'll start thinking too much. And it's a lot of brain energy thinking about combinations. Then he said, compare that to some fat motherfucker who just likes to fight. He'll just go in there and he just likes to fight and he can go all day. So I think that's a good example of challenge response, threat response. If I'm going in there and thinking like, okay, I don't want to get hit here, I don't want to get hit here, or I'm going to try this, I want to try this, I'm going to be moving a lot slower.
Yeah.
And compared to just going in there, hopefully being prepared and then just doing your thing.
Yeah, I think people don't talk enough about like analysis paralysis and, all the sometimes it's too much for like the brain. So it's knowing what you need to know and then like, letting the body do its thing. Yeah, for sure.
So she was great. We're going to have her on again this spring.
Oh, that's awesome.
She had another New York Times bestselling book called Nurture Shock about parenting. Now, most people get parenting really wrong. Fun behind the scenes fact, I started beating my kids more after reading that book.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Y'all go watch the episode to learn more. Yeah, but so like the big frame I took from her on this competition is a good thing, and that we always want, like throughout the day, we want to find ways to change our frame and find ways to win.
Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. Where can we find that?
That is where all podcasts are played. And then also you can find it on the podcast page on Super Athlete Life website.
Excellent. Very cool.